Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa, publishers of Big Blend magazines. Today we welcome lawyer turned author Adrian-Spratt. He's always been a writer though, so let's say he's not really turned. He's joining us to talk about his writing and his new novel. It's called Caroline. It is out on February 15th, 2020 through Books Fluent, and you can go get it everywhere you want to go get it. Amazon, maybe it'll be on bookshop.org, I hope. Maybe through your independent bookstores, but you can go right to his website. It's adrian-Spratt.com, and that's Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, Spratt with 2 T's. So welcome, Adrian. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. Okay, so first thing, Fleetwood Mac did a song called Caroline, and it's been in my head all day long. I just want you to know that because I figure it would be a really good song for like a playlist that would go with your book. I'm just saying. Have you heard that song?
I'm glad you mentioned that. To be honest, the Caroline that goes in my head when I think of this is the Beach Boys from Pet Sounds, Caroline No. But that's a sad song.
I like that. Song. Are you going to do a playlist of music for your book?
I haven't put one together, no.
You have to do it in the 80s, right? The 80s in New York.
You're absolutely right, yep.
Oh man, the 80s, because it's set in the 80s, is such a fascinating time. Why did you choose the 80s to have that as your setting?
I came to New York at that time. New York, as you know, had gone through a terrible time in the 70s. It almost went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1980s, it was beginning to recover, and rather quickly, I think. And there's a wonderful energy about the place at the time. So the people I knew at the time, I'm a lawyer, so disclaimer, nobody in this book is real. But I've taken elements from people I knew. They influenced the characters in this novel, even though each one of them is original. And it was just, there was just an openness to things happening, in this. I think you'll find in this novel the narrator, the protagonist, Nick Coleman, is unusually open to meeting all sorts of different people as he goes through his career as a lawyer, a new lawyer, young, and in the people he meets on the street and in the class he takes, the writing class. So I think a lot of elements came together for me, and just it seemed the right time and place for this story.
So when you put together or develop a character, there are bits and pieces, even like how you describe how they look or how they talk, and their personality comes from different people you've met or things you've seen, like you heard in plays, or just all in your mind. Where do you get your inspiration for the characters?
It's not a conscious process. Begin there.
Okay.
So let's say in a scene that just comes into my mind as we're talking, Nick Coleman goes to he's actually taken to a bar by this woman he's met named Caroline, and he meets several people there, and somehow or other, I just remember one person popped up, and I thought, what's his background? He's sort of conservative. Oh, okay, so he's a real estate developer. And then another guy is an engineer on a railroad who comes to that bar and to New York whenever he's free, which is not often. And I could just imagine them somehow, with those little bits of background, I could imagine them speaking. I could imagine let's say, their prejudices, the way they would talk to somebody like Nick. But it's not a conscious process. I guess when I say that I knew people at the time, I'm just aware that elements of people I knew creep into this novel in ways that I find interesting, but nobody else would understand, I think.
So you want to give everyone an overview of Caroline so we don't do any spoilers here.
Yes.
We don't want to ruin it, but there's passion. It's a love story. It's a passion. It's got obviously a little bit of, New York and history and law and writing. So that's always good too, to talk about writing and fiction, writing fiction. I know you also did a lot of poetry, but yeah, give us a little overview so, everyone can go, okay, I want to read this crazy, passionate love story.
Well, one of the things that discussed with the publisher is that it doesn't fit a particular genre, but I read a fair amount, well, I read a lot of literature. I was a literature major in college. I love reading that. And I also enjoy reading thrillers, police procedurals. And one of the things that matters to me as a writer is to try to keep the reader engaged, paragraph by paragraph, ideally, page by page, chapter by chapter, just keep it moving. So I think that the main thing that drives this book is the characters and the relationship between Nick and Caroline, which develops slowly but becomes the essential part of the book, especially in the second half. I think if there's a theme, it's about the relationships between people and how we aren't responsible for each other. One of the lines near the end of the book is how the inner torments of our lives can come out and harm other people. And that makes it sound a very pessimistic book. I don't mean to do that, but I think it's a novel that's very aware that everyone has a past, and how that past plays out does influence other people around them.
I agree, because when you're in any kind of relationship, even the beginning, you have a wall, but as you build the relationship, more vulnerability sneaks in and opens up, and then that baggage goes, ooh, there's a hole, there's an opening, I'm going to flow out this way, and so it does happen. You can't help it, and whether or not you're aware of it as a individual, it's going to come and get out there.
It's like we're really just a big potluck dinner. I'll put into a skin.
Oh, that sounds really delicious.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like whatever was happening when you were born, like how two people got together and here comes a baby, and then how you're raised and what happens as you're being raised and as you become an adult. All these things factor in. It's a big potluck. And so different reactions are going to happen at different times, depending how things happen. Like situations can happen, and life is just what it is. And so it's really difficult to always say how a person's going to react, because I think half the time they don't know how they're going to react to things. You think you know, and sometimes you're trained.
But once all that has happened to you, it's shaped you.
Yeah. And then you can either change the shape or increase the shape, amplify it.
No,
mine has been increasing as the years go by. How speaking of people, being an attorney, does that help you write from the character aspect, and also coming from England, because it's really interesting that this is so character driven. When Nancy and I love British comedy. And any, British, everything, thank you, BritBox. Hey, shout out to them. But there's something about British film,
so good.
TV and comedy, that it's so character driven without all the flash, There's something very real where you just identify with the characters, and the actors don't care about getting dirty. They'll, this is my character. I don't care how I look. I must be like the character, so I wonder about those two things.
It's just more real, it seems,
because you're an excellent writer, and you're in it immediately, and I'm like, oh darn, we have to go interview the author. I'm still reading, wait. But I'm glad we're here, so but being an attorney, you have to be able to read people and understand what's going on. So does that help along with, the British character side?
That's a great question. I absolutely agree with you about British film and theater. Was I consciously aware of that in writing this novel and the other writing I do? I'm not sure. I think, but I am confident that it has influenced me. Now, obviously, when people are watching this, they may be thinking, well, so here's an Englishman writing about New York in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. How authentic can it be? I had been in this country for a long time by then. And what I do consciously do is not have Britishisms creep into my writing, because that would obviously make people wary of what I've written. So it's a mixed bag, but it's a good thing. I'm obviously very pleased about my heritage, very proud of it, I might say. In terms of being a lawyer, I think you're absolutely right that you have to be able to appraise people when you're law with them. That's all very important, and I'm imagining that has influenced my depiction of characters. You obviously have to be careful not to write like a lawyer. Obviously, you don't want any heretofores and wherewiths and whatnot.
Wherewithouts.
That's right.
Those little squiggles.
I mean, otherwise, the legal, what do we call it here? Legalese. It's like, because it takes a lawyer to read a lawyer's brief. They're convoluted and hard to read.
I tell you, I read a retainer letter the other day that was so convoluted, and for me as a lawyer, it was upsetting because the convolution hidden there, what the lawyers were actually doing, which was shifting responsibility that they had under the ethics rules to the client.
Oh,
yeah. So you have to be. I'm so used to thinking in these terms now that I'm hardly aware that I'm reading a legal document until I'm talking to someone who's not a lawyer, and then I see it differently. But in any event, in terms of fiction, the kind of law I practice, I was with the Attorney General's office of the state of New York, and my job for at least 3 years there anyway was to sue companies that had deceived consumers. And the way we functioned, we put together a set of papers in which we detailed exactly what had happened. Now, in our office, in fact, both offices where I worked, there was an emphasis on making the prose as ordinary, as simple as possible, and not legalese. And so I was very fortunate that in my practice, I had to actually write as if I were writing a novel. And I couldn't have any facts that weren't there. I couldn't make things up. But it had to tell a story. Let me put it that way. And that was very useful for me.
And then also Nick is also a blind lawyer. And I know you lost your eyesight when you were 13. And we've interviewed a number of musicians who also lost their eyesight at a young age. Got to give a shout out to Joey Stuckey and Rachel Flowers, both amazing, prolific musicians and incredible people, just beautiful people. And with just such soul, but there's this attention to detail and dynamic that they have in their music, and an amazing flow. Right. So the dynamic really helps that. And I wonder about that with your writing, because you've got texture to your writing where it flows, you have that dynamic, but you really give us a sense of place. And I think that's just to have that balance. I wonder about, losing eyesight and having to draw in all of these other elements that you're more aware of things than maybe those of us with eyesight.
I think one of the things that I try to accomplish with the novel is picking up on what you're talking about, which is how does a person who doesn't have any vision operate in mainstream society, where vision obviously dominates. And I know for me, has always been important to be aware of my visual surroundings so that I'm a part of the world, not just in my own world. So I'm sure that comes through in the book. And Nick, the narrator, it's a first person narration. He battles with himself he's in the process of writing a story also in this novel. And he acknowledges to himself he hasn't seen people in quite a while. He knows how people look, he knows how buildings look, but has he seen the specific details in the past few years? No, he hasn't. So he has to, on the one hand, manufacture things, but on the other hand, use a lot of almost tricks of the trade to sort of magic tricks to give the illusion of having described somebody. And I felt really vindicated with that approach by an article that Elmore Leonard wrote about nearly 40 years ago now in the New York Times, where he said, you don't have to describe the character in complete detail. And then he quoted a passage from Hemingway where the character makes a gesture to do with lifting his hat. And Leonard comes back having quoted that and says, you don't need to know what this character looks like to have an image of them. You picture that character just from what you know about him, what he said, and from this gesture.
I think that is really true, because as you're reading a well-written book that is character-driven especially, you conjure up in your own mind, probably from people that you know and have known in the past or read about, you formulate who the person is in that book. And I can see your main character. I know what he looks like, and I'm sure what I think he looks like, which is kind of Robert Redford, just saying, that you would have somebody completely different in mind, and Lisa would have somebody different in mind.
I had fun with that in the novel. I have a whole chapter dedicated to the writing class where Nick is a student. And they're analyzing a piece he submitted. And part of the conversation is about, well, what does he look like? I thought he looked like such and such. And then somebody else gets into an argument with, no, I thought he looked like such and such.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun with that sort of thing in this novel. There's a lot of humor in the novel. In case anybody wonders.
That is fun, because also if it doesn't connect and you aren't, as a reader, creating this vision in your head, then the author hasn't done that. You haven't connected. And part of the beauty of a good novel is that it's an escape, and there's no one to tell you, no, you can't see what you're seeing in your head. You can't. It is a co-creative experience, and we need that. Human beings need that. That is part of the outlet. Is there's a freedom in being able to, whatever comes up, and no one can say no.
Yeah. And perhaps that's the difference between fiction and film.
Agreed. Yeah. And music. We all hear something different.
And music, yes. Different again, yes.
We really, really do. It's interesting too, just the one thing I think that's important with what you've done with your novel is also get folks who do not understand what it's like to be blind to have an understanding. It's something that, it's like someone comes on our show, we'll be like, oh, are you supposed to talk about it or no? Oh, to us, it's like the first thing we want to talk about, because people don't know what to do. They don't know how to acknowledge anyone with any kind of disability. And I think a lot of times our disabilities are actually our bigger abilities. It's how we perceive them and how we utilize them, So that to me is really important with what you've done.
Actually, Lisa, you bring up an important point. On the one hand, I'm trying to promote this novel as a mainstream fiction, where the almost incidentally, the major character is blind. Now, in reality, there's very, very little fiction by disabled writers who create disabled characters. There's a lot of memoir, a lot of biographies. But I think just as we were talking about the difference between film and fiction, I think with a memoir, you are confined to actual details. You can do some interpretation. And in a way, that's a little bit more like my doing my legal work beforehand, where I could not let my imagination flow. Whereas with fiction, I can, in this novel, I present a character who doesn't have any vision, is operating in mainstream society, living the life that other people are living, comparative, and as you're saying, Lisa, demonstrating through his experiences what it's like. But I'm not hammering you over the head with it.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No, you're in it. It's interesting
because you actually, after a while, the idea of somebody like being blind, it goes right out the window. It doesn't seem. I mean, you go, oh, okay, and then move on, and it comes across as a very normal, regular kind of person. And everybody has some kind of. I don't like the word disability. Never liked it. I don't like it. Challenge maybe, or I don't know, just everybody's different. And I'm sure if you really looked at everybody closely, we all have disabilities somewhere.
His stomach has got a disability. Its disabilities, it wants to grow.
Well, stop eating so much.
But
stop picking your nose.
What?
I write a blog, and my most recent post is about disability and censorship, because I am concerned about how words are used on both sides. Sometimes people are sensitive in how they use them, but also people are overly protective. To me, disability comes from DIS, which means apart from. A lot of people think it means not, but I think it means more apart from. So apart from ability, I'm actually comfortable with that. My disability is that I am set apart from other people in that I don't see. That doesn't define me. That just is a fact about me. And I worry about words like challenge and so on. I understand where they come from, but in a way, any disability is in fact a challenge. It's something that holds you back a little bit, so you have to fight to overcome it. But I don't think of my life day by day, minute by minute. Oh, I'm facing a challenge. Initially when I'm learning how to do things, learning how to type, or when I was learning to use a computer and that sort of thing, those are challenges.
That's
I think for all of us,
for everybody.
I mean,
yes, exactly.
I mean, as we travel the country, we pet sit, so we're in different homes all the time. And it's our way of, being with animals and being quarantined, if you will. And the biggest challenge we have is remote controls. Everybody's are different, and I don't care if it's the ceiling fan versus the air conditioner to the television, and then you get to the ovens and stoves. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Can we just eat a sandwich?
I like the switch on the wall. You push it up and the light goes on. You push it down, it goes off. Not the remote control.
I know. So these are challenges.
I'm challenged about remote controls.
I must tell you that Laura and I have a very unsmart home.
That's very good.
Well, I think I don't think of this as smart. I think of it as confusing. And then if you lose the remote or you don't put the batteries in, you're in trouble.
Oh, yeah. It's deconstruct. Well, it's interesting you talk about words like that, because we did an interview with a lady from an organization called Salt and Light. It's out of Tulare County, California, and it's an organization working to stop homelessness. And she said, we've all got to stop saying homeless people, that they're homeless. She said, they are people who are homeless, people who are experiencing homeless, instead of going, that's a homeless person. we travel full time, so we're kind of homeless, but we have different homes all the time, so it's this, it's very interesting. And at the same time, we have to have those words there. So laws can be written because we need them. And your a disability law. And then also there's laws in regards to the environment, which, how was that going into that? Writing about environmental law. Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, just picking up on that one point there, I actually agree with that point about homelessness. I tried to avoid disabled people. I will say people with disabilities for that reason.
Yeah, that's because everyone's people. That doesn't define who the person is.
Exactly.
In French and I think Spanish, but I know for a fact French, we in English say, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. In French, they say, I have thirst, I have hunger. And it would be nice if we could say, I have blindness, rather than I am blind.
Yeah, I like that.
Because I don't know, when you meet a person, you make up your mind, and you might change your mind later, depending on conversations and actions that happen then and afterwards. But there's I call it sixth sense. There's an instinct. Like sometimes even before you talk to somebody, you're already like, whoa, I'm not so sure about this. There's a vibe that you get, and it has nothing to do with sight or it's something deep within. I don't know how else to explain it, but the closest I can come to it, because we pet sit a lot, is that if you are around animals, you will see that people can come and go, and dogs will wag their tails and cats will leave or whatever. And every once in a while, dog will growl. And that I know something's wrong with the person that the dog is growling at, because normally the dog wags his tail, but now it's growling. And it's an instinct. It's not by sight. I think it's just an instinct that humans tend to ignore because we get so educated. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah, because I know it sounds pretty crazy, but there's
the analogy, Nancy, might be to smell. I'm certainly not aware as I go through, crowds and meet people and so on. I'm not thinking, this person smells a certain way. In fact, it would probably be pretty insulting if I did.
Yeah, that's funny though.
It turns out, I have read about studies where we actually are very much influenced by our sense of smell around people, and we don't know it. It just is there. I'm not saying that's the same thing, Nancy. I'm saying it's an analogy.
Yeah, I agree. And people it's about using your senses. What you do have, and smell is a big deal.
But there's a sense of presence.
There's a presence. You can just have that vibe. Well, don't forget, we have vibrations. There's, sound waves.
Yes,
and
we do.
Vibrations can be negative or positive, and it goes into our biology and chemistry and physics and all that stuff that I don't understand, but I know that we vibrate.
Okay.
So you didn't expect to start talking about this, did you?
No, but it's kind of it's interesting in that I've written a novel where the main character is missing a sense, as we've been saying. And it leads to this kind of discussion, which actually is not, it makes sense. There's so much that we don't know about ourselves.
That's true.
Not just psychologically, but just physiologically, so much.
And I think that's the thing about writing a novel that doesn't have to be genre specific. That's a good marketing thing, and all the PR people in the world want it. And I get it, and I understand it, because we have to do marketing too. But we're the blend, and we've just, no matter how you look at it, everything is connected in some way. Exactly. We are all connected. We all vibrate. Here we go again. We're all walking around buzzing. We're all buzzing, and the animals buzz too. But that's what life force is. Life force, it's a heartbeat that sends out those magnetic, little zippity zappity doodads whatever they are. But
okay.
But anyway,
Lisa,
going
the
back to
line I'm
that,
going to take away from this interview is we all vibrate.
we
Yeah,
all
I know.
vibrate.
It's like
We
we
do.
did
We're
an
buzzing around
interview
the world.
about
That's it. We're all
vibrations.
buzzing like little fireflies. But no, but it's a good thing, and it connects us all. So I think that's where that sense is. You feel like, ooh, you can tell the difference in a wind, a breeze.
Yes.
Where you get this breeze and it has a warm, oh, this is lovely. It could be cold and chilly, or there's this ominous breeze where you go, something's happening, and something would be happening. And so I think we as individuals, we don't study all that as much as maybe we should. And there are people who, meditate for all day long and things, and they get to really get deep in all of that. But we have extra stuff. We have extra powers that we just, need to tap into and buzz around in. But getting back to Caroline, get back there. Let's go back there. Writing this and deciding to just, write a story. That's, to me, so important. And it's artistic integrity. Like musicians, you must be country and you will always be country. That's not the way art is formed. No. So this story, where did it start for you?
Yeah.
When did it start for me?
Yeah, where? Like, what was the inspiration?
Where'd you get the idea?
I have wondered about that. I know this much. I had a dream one morning. I don't remember it, but I know that dream got me to get up and go to the keyboard, and it initiated the prologue. So, in fact, one of my I work with an editor, and she initially wanted me to dump the prologue because, as you know, I think both of you read this much. It's present day. The prologue is present day, right? And then the rest of the novel is the 1980s.
Yeah.
Now, somehow or other, that prologue, where the Nick, my protagonist, meets a young woman, a stranger in Greenwich Village. They have a conversation out of the blue. They never met before. And then they part ways, and in such a way that they will never see each other again. They don't, they like each other. They've had a really good time, but they know that this is not going to go any further. But it initiates this whole cascade of remembrance in Nick's mind. And so somehow the dream that I had that set up this prologue, in turn, the prologue set up the rest of the novel. That's the best I can do.
Well, it's kind of it's almost something, instead of a prologue, it could be epilogue. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, it's a sense of, it could be at the end of the book, like this is what you just read kind of thing. But you put it in the front.
But Nancy, at the end, although it's not called an epilogue, the last chapter actually picks up with the prologue and develops it a bit.
No spoilers allowed here.
No spoilers.
But what I like about the prologue is that you get a really good sense of Nick.
Yeah.
Immediately. And the way he's talking to himself. I know he's a narrator or narrator. Which country are we in?
Well, right now we're in the States, so it's narrator, but South Africa would be narrator. What's it in England?
What is it? Narrator.
The narrator.
Narrator.
Oh, I say narrator. I'm not going to pretend to know the actual answer.
I don't know the answer either. But
I say theater, and people in the South say theater. So
yeah,
and I say again instead of again. See, there we go. Yeah. Tomato. But you get to know Nick really well, and he's got that little spontaneous kind of like, ooh, let's just go do this, and just that whole, you get an idea in that very beginning of who this person is, and it makes you curious. So it's exciting to see, okay, well, who is he? I think it's a perfect setup for the book. I think it's great. And then next thing you know, you're in Ronald Reagan era.
Yeah.
And you've got to think about laws back then. Geez, look how many laws we have now compared to the 80s.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
And
the absence of technology.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, one of the
Yeah.
advantages of that prologue is that Nick, from time to time, I can insert a thought from Nick in the present day, looking back, and one of them is the contrast between the technology he has today. And believe me, that the difference for disabled people with disabilities, thanks to technology, is enormous. You know, in those days, when I typed a brief or even a story or whatever, I'd have to have somebody read it back to me. Now I can have my computer read it back to me.
Oh, nice. Well, it's just like
websites. No, it's like Alexa and Google. Hey, Google, and it answers you, and it's so creepy. We ask these as we house sit in different places. People have Google or they'll have Alexa. And we ask all kind of questions. It's really funny.
Yeah, we're like children.
Siri something.
We're like children now.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, you start to have this conversation. It's very odd with the whole thing.
It's weird.
But the technology, though, what I like too is, you know, as publishers, being able to have websites that are accessible to everyone. I think that is fantastic, and being able to put out content where people can listen, they can read, you know, however they want to do it, and I think that is exceptional that we're able to do that. We can reach so many more people by doing that. And that brings me to my next question. Please tell me you're going to have an audio book.
Oh, there is one.
Oh, good.
It's written by a man named John Lisco, who I had encountered several times while reading audiobooks. And I wrote to him out of the blue, and I said, I admire the way you read. One of the things I like is that you don't over dramatize. You let the book speak for itself. Would you be willing to do this? And he said yes. He's the most gracious person I can imagine meeting.
Oh, wow.
So he did the narration. It will be out, I'm hoping, at the same time as the paperback.
Cool.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful narration. In fact, I've just recently put his recording of the prologue on my website. So you get a sense of how good he is.
Awesome.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Because I think, I mean, it's really great, you know, for those who just want to read and people listen as they drive. I mean, look how podcasting just shows how popular it is that people can listen, you know? So that's exciting. I'm excited.
For the author, it's like having a whole new experience of the novel. You know, I've got the novel that's in my head. I've got the novel as I read it, but it's still there in my head. When Lescaut is reading it, narrating it, it's a whole new experience, and he got the jokes, you know, he got the humor. He felt the sadness when there are sad moments, and he doesn't over dramatize it, but you can tell it's there, and it's quite touching. It's very moving.
Oh, nice.
Are you able to read books without there being, you know, there's Kindles, and is there software that you're able to use to read, like just regular books that may not have been put into an audiobook form?
Yes. There are a variety of ways of doing that. But what I will say is I don't read Braille very fast. I use it. It's very useful for notes and so on. But I'm such a slow reader that in Braille that it doesn't work for me. The people I know who read Braille fast, they have the real advantage. Because they are quite literally, they're not I'm relying on a speech synthesizer when I'm using those other technologies. So it's still sound. It's not interpreting, but on the other hand, there has been some interpretation built into how they narrate. For example, a speech synthesizer will recognize the end of a sentence, and it will shift its I've forgotten the word I'm looking for, but anyway, it will change the tone of voice so that you know you've reached the end of the sentence. So there's some interpretation there, but with Braille, you're on your own, and it's great.
It's interesting. Well, things are getting easier and better. I like that. You know, I think technology's got it's got some annoying things, but there's a lot of positive, and that's fantastic.
It's exactly right.
Yeah, we've got to take the good with the, do we really? But, you know, and you have to learn all those new things too. You know, it's like Joey Stuckey, I was telling you about him, the musician. He is a recording engineer and a producer, and he has sons. He's going to get mad at me. Sun Shadow Studios. Oh, I've got it sound. Anyway, he runs a recording studio, and you wouldn't think so, but he does. And he puts out the most amazing music, records albums for all kinds of people. And so it's fantastic. So,
well, the thing
and
that strikes me about the two of you is you're using technology in the way that could never have been used. So your broadcasts, back in the 60s, we had a limited number of channels on the television.
Right.
And, even with cable, you're still limited to companies you could afford to carry it and so on. Now, people like you, you do a wonderful show. And,
thank you.
Thank you.
Don't have to have a whole, it's great.
Yeah, we don't have to have we don't have to be the big newscaster.
No.
thing. I mean, it used to be, we all wish we could be on like cable TV or whatever. And in South Africa growing up, there wasn't. You had to share the TV with different languages and at certain times. Yeah. So there wasn't TV at midnight, I think maybe on weekends. And then it would be, okay, this hour is Afrikaans, this one is Zulu or Xhosa. So you had all these different, which was good in a way, you learned language. But you were very limited. And when we got here, I was absolutely in shock about all the TV channels. And then
it was crazy.
The amount of crazy talk shows. I think I woke up the first day in America, on my uncle's couch. We were both on a pull-out couch, and he put the TV on, and it was the guy before Jerry Springer.
Yeah,
it was the first guy who did that crazy, and these families were arguing, and people were getting kicked off the stage.
And we're like, what?
I'm like, is this how American families act? What the heck? Where did we arrive? I'm scared. Mommy, let's go back to South Africa. But it is amazing that we're able to do this. Nancy started the magazine in South Africa, typewriter, and
on a typewriter, portable typewriter.
Then got one of the first computers to be able to do all the art and the graphics and print out film. And then she tried to put it on a disc and give it to the printers. The printers didn't have they weren't
what
ready.
I had.
Compatible,
so you go through this whole thing. But it is amazing. I mean, to me, if it furthers communication and it is unlimited in that we can connect with people around the world, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, look like what we're doing now. Anybody in the world who has access to the internet and a computer can hear this. If they choose to, okay?
Or a phone,
how we don't have to be on a big channel on TV. We can find and produce and present without all the stuff that everybody had to do up until this time of the internet and computer. And when I look at like when we used to do our magazine in print, I always felt guilty about the number of trees being chopped down to print what we were printing, because, and now we don't have to do that. I mean, and I like that we don't have to print anymore, and it just, you can only reach so many people in print.
I suppose the only question is how much electricity goes into powering the computers that's powering the connection between us.
But is that tearing down trees?
Well, no, the screens. What is bad is the screens are made up from minerals and things that are being extracted from the earth. So there's that. It's never
true.
Maybe one day we'll get, the way they want to give us a new computer every 2 to 3 years. That's not very good either. So hopefully we'll get to a point where, like, I'll hold on to a car until it's like, that's it, I'm done.
Yes.
I do it with my clothes. I mean, I know that, your pet sit, and then people have cameras and they know, okay, Lisa's running around playing with the dog, and then they see
in her jammies,
but she's got like socks with holes in her socks. Yes, because if they're not quite done yet, when the bottom part is off, then there's still a sock. So I'm terrible that way, but why waste, So, and that's great. I think for books, I mean, people are able to, consume books the way they want to around the world. I mean, it can even help going into different languages. It's exciting. Are you going to write any more poetry? Do you still write poetry? I know that was part of your beginning of writing.
I actually I wrote one poem this year that I put out on my website, I generally, I don't feel, with fiction, I feel as though I read enough that I have an awareness of what works in contemporary fiction, have an awareness of the what's gone before. With poetry, I stopped reading it with any regularity some years ago, and I just don't feel confident. I'm not saying I write badly. I just feel much more confident about my prose at this point and writing stories.
Are you going to do another novel?
To tell you the truth, I have 3 more already waiting.
Oh, wow.
This is exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, I certainly have a lot, and I have a memoir. In fact, I have 2 memoirs.
Oh, wow.
And stories. So yeah, I have more to come.
Oh,
Awesome.
good. Well, that means we get to chat with you again.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I know this is airing on Valentine's Day, the day before your book launch, which is February 15th, 2022. Everyone, it's adrian-Spratt with 2 T's.com. Go get it. The book is called Caroline. But before we go, since it's airing on Valentine's Day, what is the ultimate romantic dinner for you?
Whatever it might be is with my wife.
So there's,
of
course, with your wife.
Answer.
Yeah, make sure. But what's going to be on the table? Do you have set music that you like? Certain foods?
You know what? We actually don't play music when we are having dinner, having meals. We always seem to be finding something to talk about, which is pretty amazing after 30 years together.
Wow,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
So, maybe I'll get my act together and get some flowers.
Well, that would be good.
There's a start. There we go.
Yes.
Flowers, some flower power. Yeah,
yes.
Some little chocolate. I'm still in chocolate mode. Recording this after the holidays. The chocolate is gone. And it's a very sad day.
That is sad.
Yes, the chocolate is almost gone with us too.
Oh, but we love that, but it gives us a good excuse to have it. It's like, yay, the holidays are here. Bring the chocolate, bring it out.
But that's if on previous Valentine days and such, you haven't done that much, and then all of a sudden you do something, then that's suspect. How women think it's suspect. What did you do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Now here goes a whole other thing.
Now your wife is in the background going, shut up, Nancy.
One thing I can add to the chocolate theme is that Laura, my wife, knows that I love English candy.
So, yeah.
For Christmas, I always get lots of English candy.
Oh my gosh.
Cadbury eggs.
I remember, do you remember Cadbury eggs when they were Cadbury eggs? Thick Cadbury eggs, like for the Easter eggs. Oh my gosh. When we lived in England.
Get them here in our local deli.
You do?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. England it changed everything about candy for me. England. I wanted the pennies. I wanted to go to the candy, the sweet shop,
The sweet shop.
And the hard rock. Yep. Remember the rock?
The rock candy. Yeah.
Rock, big sticks of rock. And then like all the little lemon drops and the wine gums. I mean, England is the best. And licorice. That's where my licorice thing. I went berserk over licorice. And there's only certain companies you can get from here that make it good. Not Twizzlers. Sorry, no offense to Twizzlers. That is not licorice. That is not licorice. Some parts are.
Especially not the red licorice.
I am literally drooling right now thinking about all the candy in England.
Well, I'm not sure if I should even promote this, but there is a company in New Hampshire, mail order, and obviously online order, where you can, all they do is sell English candy in the States.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Cool. I'm going to, do you know what the name is?
I do. Are you, okay.
Yeah,
you can say it.
Jolly Grub.
Jolly
Grub?
Ooh, I wonder if they have salt and vinegar chips like real ones.
People who don't know this, grub in England is sort of slang for food.
Yeah.
It's not about bugs.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's grub. Yeah. But oh my gosh. All right. Well, you know what I want?
Jolly Grub.
Is it my birthday yet?
No.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a true pleasure chatting with you, and we wish you the best of luck with Caroline and all your other books. Please keep us posted.
Yeah, please.
Very much, both of you. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.